Guys, and welcome back. We are going to continue Indian Captive by Lois Lenski. Whenever we left our pioneer family, the Jamesons, they were discussing with their neighbor the threat of the Indians in their territory of Pennsylvania and what that would mean for them. And Thomas Jameson, the dad, was being rather boastful about his lack of fear of the Indians, along with Molly or Mary Jameson's brothers. So let me back up a minute or two. It says, "We're staying here," I said, repeated Thomas. "Come what may, I'll plant my corn tomorrow." His voice rang hard like the blow of a blacksmith's hammer against the anvil. In the silence that followed, Jane's hand fell from her husband's arm. Molly ran to her mother's side and put both arms around her waist. Thomas's voice went on. "As soon as the troops start operations, the engines will run fast enough. They'll agree to a treaty of peace mighty quick. Then our troubles will be all over. We've stuck it out this long. We may as well stay for another season. Leave a good farm like this? Not yet, I won't. I'll plant my corn tomorrow." His words were cocksure and defiant, but they brought no comfort to his listeners. The baby began to cry, and neighbor Wheelock went out. In a moment he was back, addressing Miss Jameson. "I brought my sister-in-law and her 3 children along with me, ma'am. Her husband, my brother Jonas, is with the troops, and I'll taken her back east. She won't stay in the settlement longer. Our horse was half sick before we started and can't go no further. Can you give us lodging, ma'am, for a day or two to get rested up?" None of the Jameson family had looked out or seen the woman. She stood by the horse, waiting patiently, with a boy of 9 beside her and 2 small girls in her arms. Miss Jameson hurried out to bid her welcome, calling back to Betsy to put the pot on to boil. "Boys, the chores," called Thomas. Then he added, "Go fetch neighbor Dixon's horse, Molly, child, like I told you." Molly and her father walked out the door together. Despite his stern ways and blustering words, he had a great affection for his children, and Molly was his favorite. He put his great knotty hand on her head and rumpled her tousled yellow hair. "Pa," Molly hesitated, then went on, "ain't you ever afraid like Ma?" "Why should I be afraid?" laughed her father. "There's nothing to be scared of. The Injuns will never hurt you, Molly child. Why, if they ever saw your pretty yaller hair shining in the sun, they'd think 'twas only a cornstalk and a tassel. They'd pass you by for certain." That could be some interesting foreshadowing, considering that we've already read the beginning of this book, and we know that Molly, or Mary Jameson in this case, is the only one in her family who did not get killed by the Indians. Molly laughed. Then she turned her head and looked back and through the open cabin door. She saw her mother with Betsy and Miss Wheelock and her little ones busying themselves in the big room. She saw the thick oak timber door, battened and sturdy. She knew it turned on stout wooden hinges and was secured each night with heavy bars braced with timbers from the floor. She wondered if, even then, it was strong enough to keep the Indians, the hated, wicked, dangerous Indians, out. Her blue jeans gown flew out behind her as past the barnyard on long thin legs she ran. She passed old Barney, her father's horse that had the devil in him and liked to kick, making a circle wide of his heels. She passed the grindstone and the well sweep with the grapevine rope. Then she ran the full length of the rail fence that bordered the field where the corn would soon be growing and rustling in the breeze. She flew past the bee tree where the autumn before her brothers had caught the bear, his claws all sticky with honey. Molly Jameson was small for her age. She looked more like a girl of 10 than the 12 she really was. Her blue eyes shone bright from her sun-tanned skin, and her hair was yellow, the pale, silvery yellow of ripened corn. Have y'all ever opened or shucked corn? You can see that it's not really yellow, but like a glittering off-whitish pale yellow color. So you can be thinking about that in your head. That's kind of what they're comparing her hair to. She ran swiftly, her whole body swinging to the free and joyous motion. Molly was glad to go to neighbor Dixon's anywhere to get out of the house. There was always a load of anxiety there, reflected in her mother's face and her father's stern words, a load of worry which pressed down upon her naturally light spirits and brought sadness to her heart. This latest news of the Indians would only make things worse. Then, too, there was always a fever of work in the house, so many things that had to be done. She wondered sometimes if her father and mother ever thought of anything else but work. It seemed to keep them busy from morn to night getting food and clothing for their large family. Had they no time for happiness? Out of doors, Molly could get away from it all. She could forget there were such irksome duties as spinning and weaving, cooking and sewing, and worst of all, doing sums and reading in books. Betsy could do these things. Betsy took to them, as their mother said. She did not bungle, as Molly did. But out of doors, Molly could watch the birds, the butterflies, and all the wild things. She could be one with them. She could pretend she was as wild, as free, as happy as they. When she had work to do out of doors, she worked willingly enough. She thought of the happy days to come, working in the corn, plowing, planting, weeding. Molly ran on. Soon she was in the woods. She knew every inch of the trail, each stone, each stump, each tree. She ran fast and reached the Dixons' cabin before the slanting rays of the setting sun were blotted out by the trees. And here we are in the middle of chapter 1, and we see that the author has put in these little asterisk stars right here. So even though that we're still in the same chapter, we're going to see a shift here. The authors put that there to show us that this is the end of this thought process, and we're going to continue, but we're going to be on a different wavelength. So it starts with some quotes. Tell her to make me a cambric shirt without any seam or needlework. Tell her to wash it in yonder well, where never spring water nor rain ever fell. Tell her to dry it on yonder thorn, which never bore blossom since Adam was born. Molly's voice, thin and piping, broke through the quiet of the forest. Her heart sang too as her lips formed the words. The song was an old one of her mother's, many songs her mother had used to sing. Why was it now she sang no more? Was it fear that had stopped her singing? It was early the following morning, and Molly was on her way back from the Dixons. The sun had not yet risen. In the woods, the light was dim and uncertain, the early light before dawn. The morning air smelled clean and freshly washed. The birds were awake, chirping and singing. A gentle breeze stirred, rustling the branches of tender green. The trail wound in and out among rough, jagged tree stumps. The borrowed horse slowed down from a trot to a walk. His hoofs beat gently on the soft dirt trail. Molly bent her head, pressing her nose into the horse's mane as an overhanging branch scraped her shoulders. She straightened her back again. Then suddenly the horse stopped. He stood still, his whole body quivering. Molly's song died on her lips. Her face turned pale. She leaned forward and gave the horse a pat. The sharp, sweet tones of a birdsong rang out through the quiet. A fallen branch crackled beneath the horse's feet as he stirred nervously. Then all was still. Underneath the oaks, it was black and dark. Molly stared into the blackness. The trunks of many trees crowded close and seemed to press upon her. Was something moving there? Her breath came short as her happiness faded away. The forest had changed from a world of beauty to a world of fear. The girl glanced back quickly over her shoulder as if a glimpse of the Dixon home, which she had so recently left, might give her comfort. Here, between the reality of the neighbor's log cabin and the unreality of the unknown dark forest, she paused, sensing danger. Here, anything might happen. Here, wild animals prowled, Indians hid, and evil lurked. Molly went white about her lips. She turned her head and looked on all sides. She saw no movement, heard no sound. The sharp, strident bird song rang out again, piercing in its sweetness. Was it a note of warning or a word of comfort? What do you think? Do you think this bird song that's piercing through the silence is a note of what's to come? Do you think that danger is coming? Danger is lurking in the shadows of the forest? What do you think Molly is experiencing? Then strangely, a vision of her home rose before the girl's eyes. She saw her tall, lanky father in the big kitchen with her mother, and her mother was scared as she had been last night, as she always was when there was talk of Indians. Molly pulled on the horse's bridle and urged him forward. Keeping her eyes on the trail ahead, she rode on, faster and faster, as fast as the trail would permit. She was fearful now, not for herself, but for her family. What if the Indians had come in her absence? And we'll pause here. So what are your thoughts? Do you think the Indians have come while Molly has been at the Dixons? Or do you think that they're still out there and we haven't figured it out yet? Join us next time as you reflect on what you think is going to happen next to the Jameson family. Thanks for joining.